Welcome, everybody, to the show. Joining me is our regular co-host and fellow traveler, Dan, the Dan Noodles Man, the Dirk Pit of Wargaming. And
What the
joining us are
hell?
our three very special guests from the hallowed halls of sunny GMT HQ in wherever it is in California. We have Gene and Rachel Billingsley and Kai Jensen. So thanks so much for joining us this evening. We've been trying to set something like this up for eons. Dan has been talking.
Eons, I say.
I have done very little. Anyway, so I want to thank everybody who's watching for coming out tonight as well. So I want to start with you, Gene, because we've never had you on the show before. We have had Kai on. This is Rachel's first time as well. I thought I would ask, because you've been with GMT, as the main man, as it were, since the beginning, how GMT has changed since that initial batch of games. I've been going through on my Monday show some of the early GMT games, and how has GMT less about the games themselves, but how has GMT evolved as a company since it was founded?
That's a hell of a starter question.
That's a good question. It's fair. Place of the cows. I love that. Way to go, Scott.
So how has GMT changed?
We always
Or do we need time for this?
Well, we need time for Scott because I always know when we're close to home because it smells like home.
Mm-hmm. Fair. So I mean the introduction of the P500 system was that. I mean, I think I can speak for most wargamers and say that was the first time we'd seen that kind of pre-order method, is when you introduced it.
Yeah.
Was there a spark of an idea from somewhere else, or did you just come up with that out of thin air?
And Gene, and I'd like to add, was there a touch? Because I don't remember back then, because I'm young. Was there a touch of desperation, to do the P500, like it's do or die type thing?
Well, I'd say there's a little bit, Dan. But so what happened is we went through 1990 to 1995, 96. Things are going pretty well, growing gradually. I'm trying to answer your first question too, Artie.
Mm-hmm.
Gradually adding some new people, bringing Mark Simonich in was huge. He was a big help to the company. Tony Curtis coming in was huge. Andy Lewis, all three of those guys really made us better. And then, new designers. Every time a new designer came in, he brought a whole ton of creativity and new types of games often to us. What happened in 1996, and back then we did most of our sales through stores and distribution. And, we back in those days, we sent out direct mail. I do this update every month now. Back then it was about every quarter, and we sent out a direct mail thing. It cost tens of thousands of dollars to send it out.
Oh my God!
So we'd get orders back directly, but most of our orders came from distribution. So maybe 75% of our revenue came from distribution stores, and the rest came directly from customers. So in 1996, the distribution channel kind of fell apart. I mean, almost half of them went out of business.
Was this when Wizard's Attic blew up?
Don't know about that. But I do know that all of a sudden we were getting half the orders we were getting before, but we still had 100% of the costs we had before. So,
of course,
do the math, right? I mean, that's not a good thing. And so I thought about it, and I decided that it wasn't a good idea ever to put the fate of the company in the hands of people that didn't really care about us. And so I'm not saying that distributors didn't care, but mostly we were a commodity to them. They were selling our games and making a profit, and they weren't really tied into the company. And so I was like, well, who could we bet the future on, basically? And I was like, it's all the customers. They're the ones who care about these games. They're the ones who like to hear about where the company is. And so I'm like, I got to figure out a way to flip this so we're not doing 75% depending on distribution and 25% on individuals. And so I thought about a bunch of different things. I talked to Tony Curtis. I talked to Mark Herman, because Mark was the guy who wasn't in the triumvirate, officially in-house at GMT, but man, he's somebody I always went to because he was my friend, but also tons of respect because of what he did at Victory Games. And and what he did in his real life, his day job. So Mark always gave me good advice, and so kind of ran this idea by them. And we tweaked it a little bit. Talked to Roger McGowan a little bit. Said, here's what we think we're going to do, and some of them thought it was a little bit crazy. A lot of our customers thought it was pretty crazy in the beginning.
Why? I don't get it.
Competitors made a lot of fun of us because it was new.
Nobody did
but
before.
It's convenient.
And so, now everybody knows that.
Well, here's the thing. I knew that if you can make whatever program you want, you have to deliver. So I had to make sure that customers knew that their pre-order was safe with us, that their money was safe with us, and that when they put something out there, they're actually going to get a game. And so when we started out, I told them, hey, we'll charge your cards, and within 12 weeks, we'll ship a game. And that was a little bit cash flow desperate, Danny. Not 100%, but we didn't have the kind of cash reserves that we could just carry, receivables for a long time. And so, yeah, what Mark said, we had to create trust. And so you do that by delivering again and again and again and again. And so one way the company has changed since then, that 12 weeks, now we charge on a Monday or Tuesday, and we ship the next Monday or Tuesday. And that creates a lot of trust. And when you do that again and again and again, pretty soon people go, hey, this is a safe bet. And then
Gene, if I can interject, to have that consistency, you need regular employees, man. You can't have just 100%. Employees coming in and out, because it just doesn't work like that. You need people who care. Like, hey, let's get this out on Monday instead of picking my nose somewhere in California.
As long as you're not picking your nose live on camera, it's okay. Or at least it's your business.
We've been very
fortunate. You know what I'm saying, Gene?
I do. The designers and sometimes me and developers and artists, they get the credit really, but the credit for the way the operation runs is usually in the warehouse or the office.
Of course.
We were very fortunate in our early years that I ran a computer company for a while, and the lady who managed our computer company, her name was Jewel, and she was well named. And when we started GMT, I asked her if she'd come with me. And so for a while it was me and Jewel, and then me and Jewel and my wife, who's a network engineer and a programmer, and she kind of did all the techie stuff for us in the beginning. But it was Jewel who not only made sure that the work got done, but she made sure that anybody we hired, they came in and they knew from day one. She would say, look, you can work yourself in or out of a job here. It's up to you. And then she set high standards for them. And I backed her up. And, we fired people sometimes. We gave them chances, but we found one girl. One day there were two Hmong young lady who were Hmong, because we have a community here of Hmong who were refugees from Vietnam. And these two Hmong young ladies came in and applied for a job. We had a couple of spots in the warehouse, and their resumes looked good. We liked them, and we knew they'd be hard workers, we thought. And so one of them gets right to it, and she ended up working for us for like 15 years. Within 2 hours, we couldn't find the other one. We're like, what happened to her? Nobody knew. We found her asleep in her car.
Wow.
And so, that's not going to work, right?
So it's a very relaxed attitude to have it work.
So, there's all the normal kind of stories. Oh, I keep trying to fire Mark. He never lets me. I think he fired me for friends too. It's all right. What are friends for? But anyway, that's a general look at what you said, Dan. You got to have people that want to keep doing it and doing it the right way. So Jewel, we brought in a lady named Letitia, who was maybe the best.
I remember her.
And I say these names to some of our customers, like, "Oh yeah, I talked to her on the phone. She was really helpful." Yeah. And now we have a lady named Elizabeth who runs our office and warehouse, and Articelli is her assistant, and together they're a tremendous team. And we've got 15 people back there in the warehouse or whatever, and And they make sure on a daily basis that everybody knows exactly what's required. And we're a place, we have high standards, but we also forgive quickly. Well, one of my views in life is if you don't forgive quickly, you're pretty much going to be unhappy. And if you do, pretty happy life.
Have you never met my ex-wife, man?
So we set that environment up where there's high standards, but they also have a lot of support. And when you make a mistake, you learn from it and you go forward. Try not to make the same one again.
But Gene.
Yeah.
If it didn't work, what? Where would you have been? Where are you going?
Probably running a computer company again would be my guess.
It's hard to say, but honestly, yeah, I might have been back in the computer world. But the thing is, I was good at the computer world, but I didn't like it that much. I love what I do now. I mean, I may not be very good at it, but I love it. And so that counts for a lot.
I feel like you folks are doing okay, at least. So
I think so.
I mean,
yeah.
Anybody in this business, right? This is a low margin, high effort business with relatively little in the way of financial rewards. Just the companies continue to exist after this amount of time. I mean, it's been 35 years or so, right?
Almost.
I mean, you're coming up on that, so you've been around that long. Obviously, you're not screwing too much stuff up.
Well, you'd hope not, right?
Even if you do need to take an occasional nap in the car.
I think it's what we were talking about with trust earlier. When you mess up, and you will, it's impossible with human beings that you don't mess up once in a while. You own it. You clearly communicate the best you can what the problem was, and you tell your customers how you're going to fix it, and then you fix it.
And Gene, are you good at delegating?
I'm better than I was. I'm not going
to. Rachel just cracked a smile there, man.
Yeah. Well, there's a story. Rachel can tell you that story.
Oh yeah, everybody's got a reason. I could agree. It's difficult for me to delegate stuff too. And I've got stories as well where God damn it, I gotta go fix this thing. Blah, 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 blah. So it happens. It's hard to delegate, but boy, delegating is really useful because no one person. Can do
absolutely.
It all
you got to give the trust to the person you're delegating whatever to, and get out of their hair for God's sake.
Except for you, Dan, you can't. You can do everything on your own. So.
I know that.
So Kai, you've been doing the production end of GMT for a bit now. How has it changed since you took that over, or at least started to take that over?
Oh Lord, I don't know. I don't know what it looked like before when Tony was doing it, because production was kind of a behind the scenes thing. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people know what goes on there, and so I was doing the weekends at the warehouse, and I was a developer working with a designer, and still had no idea what production actually looked like. So how has it changed? It's mine. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm actually asking how it's changed for you since you've been doing it. Have there been any changes? Because, we live in a, let's say, dynamic manufacturing and logistics environment in the world today. What are the recent challenges? I mean, I think everybody feels like some of the supply chain problems have resolved themselves that we had back during COVID, but certainly not everything, right? What are the challenges everybody's facing today in terms of production?
Container issues right now. Getting shipping containers has been a problem for the last year, and it's massively expensive. And I never thought I would have to deal with pirates having an effect on my day job, but they do.
Is that incredible?
Yeah. I mean, I've actually got my great grandmother's. She was a merchant mariner, and so we've got her logs of coming up by sailing ship up the South America coast and getting boarded by pirates and having to fight them off. And I'm like, still in the family, because I'm still having to deal with them. But yeah, that kind of thing has an effect. I think I'm tracking more data than we've ever tracked before on a spreadsheet hound.
If it's pirates and Kai, I got $10 on Kai. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to say, you better put that on your business cards, Kai. I totally would. Anti-pirate officer.
Yeah.
There's a game for Vocal. There's a game for Vocal right there. A new game. A new game.
Yeah. I'll just hand in my grandma's book.
We've already had that conversation with Volko, fortunately. So, Yeah, I mean, I didn't think of it, but yeah, pirates are actually a thing. So, well, that was more revelatory than I expected it to be. Thank you, Kai.
Yeah, but I also,
That-
I think I look at more data now than we have because I'm just a spreadsheet hound. So everything I can think of that I've got my fingers into on costing, on, components that go into the games, everything like that, I'm keeping track of all those little bits and pieces of what does it cost us? How does that affect the game price as we move forward? And where can I find deficiencies? And so I track that data, and I've been looking at it for the last, year and a half, 2 years, and seeing, are there any trends here that we can start taking advantage of now that I've started accumulating enough data to be significant. So I think that's,
you're absolutely not, because I'm thinking you're artsy, but you're way more bookish. You're way more. What am I trying to say? I'm not trying to say anything bad here. I'm trying to say something good.
My finger's on the button, Dan. On the button. There's a big red button just off camera here. Please proceed carefully.
You're super logical. I wouldn't. There's no way I'd be able to do that. And personally, I think you're a wicked asset to GMT. Not that GMT.
I thought you were going to say something different there,
but
Dan.
I think
Thank
you're
you.
a wicked asset. You see, I could be nice to Artie, so you just shut up.
Admittedly, it's a great effort of that Dan is putting forth here after the legendary takedown that Kai gave him last time she was on the show.
Oh my God! You have to bring that up.
I should have thought. I did not think to clip that out and put that on this and have it available. You know what?
Something like, can I get on a horse without a stool or something like that?
No, it's something about milking the moose. But
cripe.
So this is true. I love this particular idea. By the way, I just want to say that anti-piracy efforts, 2024 in this case. So, and is this actually accurate? I need to know.
No, that's my deadlift, not my bench.
Okay, that's still pretty good. I don't think I got deadlift 235. I mean. Other than getting out of bed every day, that's a fair effort. But beside that, it's the top 5 show. It really was. I did clip it. It's on the channel somewhere, but I didn't make it ready. So Rachel, since we have left you alone to while other folks answer questions so far, what do things look like on the marketing end of GMT? Right? Is it you that mostly coordinates the newsletters, for example, and what other efforts does GMT make for outreach to anybody really?
Okay, so the newsletter is the most joint we are in the marketing department. So my dad, Gene, does quite a bit of that. I do quite a bit of that, and Luke, who is also in our department, my brother, does quite a bit of that as well. So that is kind of our joint thing that we do every month. We get the most people viewing that. I want to say we have around maybe 30,000. Tell me if I'm wrong, Dad, but who view that every month.
It goes out to 33,000 people.
33? Okay.
About 70,000 viewers overall.
Oh, 70,000 viewers. Okay.
That's extremely respectable.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons. Okay, and I talk about this in GMT talks sometimes. Like the newsletters are too long. We know they're too long. Okay, but the most people view them. So it's like, should we just cram it all in? Probably. People love it, as far as from what I've been told. Anyway, so that's number one. We also have Inside GMT, which we've been running for about 10 years now. And I really love it because it's a way for our designers, developers, sometimes content creators to come on our blog and just talk about games or design or whatever they want. And there's not really a paper thing that has to go out. It's not really a big cost to us or to them. It's easy for me to edit them. Lots of people love it. More recently, we've been starting doing videos to some success, but we're still learning what we're doing on that. But we've been doing some interviews and some different content on YouTube.
Plus the podcast.
Yep, the podcast. We've got that started. I'm enjoying that.
GMTLDR, my favorite.
I'm sorry?
GMTLDR.
Oh, yes.
That's my
GMTLDR. I'm glad you like it, Kai.
That's my
Sorry.
favorite too.
Sorry, I
I'm
did something.
confused. I don't know what you did here, Dan.
I messed up.
I have no idea. Dan was trying to play the video that he sent me like several days ago that I didn't get uploaded.
Yeah,
to
you're ruining
StreamYard.
my life.
We'll
And by
play
the
it
way,
some other time. This is
Rachel-
just a great excuse, Dan, to get all three of these fabulous people back on the show for a second round.
Rachel,
Yes.
personally, as a musician, I love your voice. I
Oh.
love your voice. Very husky. Okay, no matter what I say, it's going to turn bad. No matter what I say, it's going to turn bad.
Yeah,
I
that's
love your
basically
voice.
an accurate statement.
And
Well,
I wanted to ask
You could stop there, Dan. It's okay.
okay.
While we're on the subject, thank you for writing a song for us to use in GMT Talk.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I understand. People, lay people call it a song. Us learned people call it a piece. But thank you
peace.
anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Dan's
It's a
piece
joke,
got me
for
in trouble
God's
with the
sake.
YouTube copyright police, so
For God's
employ
sake.
with caution. I'm just saying.
Well,
Oh,
I mean,
Art-
we laugh at and with Dan, but I have to say, the video and music that I saw this year for the Charles Roberts Awards that you did was tremendous. It was just outstanding.
We all
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
Dan. Dan puts
Thank you very much.
Dan is has a really patented shtick as a kind of a disorganized nut. And he actually works incredibly hard behind the scenes, and he doesn't want anybody to know. And I'm embarrassing him right now by telling everyone this. The world now knows, Dan, that you are actually the person that puts way more effort into this show than I do.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks.
So I'm just saying, and I wouldn't look as good as I do if it wasn't for Dan. So.
I want to put this video up for God's
But
sake.
thank you, Gene, for the kind words on the CSR presentation. Dan worked really hard on it, and it would have been out like 2 weeks earlier had I not caused a delay. So, you can, Dan, try to present the video then if you want to try and hit present at the bottom and then select video file.
What a beautiful day!
What's that woman's name? Kai! Kai! Kai!
Kai! Kai! Kai!
Thank you, Dan, for that dazzling
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, here in
I'm scared.
Canada,
I'm like-
everything's legal, so I was under the influence.
I did see the video already, but having now seen it live on the air, I'm like, yep, people will be confused. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was confused.
Too many of those magic mushrooms. Dan.
Well, hey, what, you guys have hate Ashbury? You know what I'm saying? You
That
heard
is
from
not
me,
in that part of California, Dan, but
And,
No, we don't have that here.
Rachel, I wanted to ask you.
Mhm.
Your dad's got a company, right? Blah blah blah. It's great. I wish I had that opportunity that I would work, that I would maybe be able to join the company, this and that. But sometimes you don't want to hang around with dad. You know what I'm trying to say? So when was it that you said, all right, I'm making a commitment. I'm gonna play games all my life. You know what I'm saying?
Is that
Well,
what you do?
Just to address that, first of all, I don't play that many games as my job. It's not really like
Well, yeah, you don't
Part
have
of
the
the
time.
marketing
I don't know how
description.
you guys got the time.
true. Well, I want to say it was about 9 years ago after I graduated college. I'd been on some interviews, wasn't that excited about it. Marketing firms, they don't interest me that much. And I had been doing some work on the side for GMT, and I finally just thought, maybe I try this. And I know nepotism was part of it at the beginning. Like, let's not pretend, but I like to believe I brought a lot to the company.
Of
Since I
course you
started,
did.
so.
Of course you did. And who are you? The main insider person that takes care of the newsletter that goes out? Because I think that's a hell of a lot of work. Like, I think that's the crux right now of GMT to keep people in the know at what GMT does.
The newsletter we do monthly, Gene and I do together.
I'm talking about
The
Oh,
Insider?
the blog. The blog.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I'm the editor of that. That's right.
So, like, that's the majority of your work? I would assume.
It used to be.
He's got a lot of work.
I would say like 30% now. So
Really,
Mhm.
it's fun. I enjoy reading the different things that designers send me and various others.
Gene,
had a
just so you
question
know,
for
I'm
you.
instructing Mark to that he must show up to the next GMT West with Death Ride Kursk, and he will take over the entire warehouse. So just so you know that's coming.
Okay.
and
I
GMT
think we'll all be perfectly happy with
Yeah,
that.
play whatever
actually.
you want. That's
Yeah.
right.
Artie, GMT East is exactly where?
It used to be in White Plains, New York, right? And then it moved to like somewhere very close by, but not White Plains anymore, as I
So how
recall. I've
far
never
from
been
my
there.
place? How far from my place would that be?
It's basically New York City.
Oh, 8
So
hours.
7, 8. I don't know. You're in I don't know
8
where you are.
hours.
Out in the wilderness, riding your moose around. I mean, I don't know how far you live outside the civilized lands. So,
Well, I live in the country too, and I can't do the city anymore. It's just overwhelming, and people's aura don't mix with mine.
Dan fits in perfectly well on the internet, however, so it actually all works out.
Excuse me.
You are okay. So what? I don't want to like position anybody to answer a question like what is your most anticipated upcoming release, because that puts one of you
you
in
can't ask.
an
I'll
awkward
tell you.
position.
I mean, I'll tell you.
All right, well let's hear
Away
it then.
team. I want to.
Okay,
wait.
fair,
Seriously?
fair. With its
Really,
10
eh?
million words of text that
Yes.
John has been sweating out for the last 3 years.
It's a fact.
Hey,
Yeah.
talking about designers, Gene, you're a designer yourself, but you run a company. So making a game like Mr. President, that's what it's called, right?
Yes, Mr.
That's what it's
President.
called.
Okay. How long did it take you to make that game, man? 20 years?
That was in the pipeline for quite a while, wasn't it?
No, but
It was-
I'm saying that. I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm just saying that to like
Well, let him answer then.
juggling this and juggling that and playing a game and doing this and that and that and
It's a lot of juggling. Back in 1993, when we had 5 or 6 designers, 2 of them were Richard Berg and Mark Herman. I spent a year of my life doing Crisis Korea in 1995. Tons of research, lots of scenarios. Nobody had really done anything like that. I kind of get obsessed when it comes to designing a game, and I just had to finish it. And it really didn't help the company that I focused on the game at that time. And Richard Berg came to me afterwards and he said, "Don't ever do that again, because you'll kill the company." And so for the longest time, I just developed other people's games. But about 2004, 2005, I was talking with Tom Swiatkowski. We always talked when he'd come home from wherever he was deployed. And we just have one of those chats about the world, economics, politics, geopolitics. And I kept telling him, I want to make a game about being the president where you think about all this stuff, but I can't figure out how to do it. And he said, well, if you ever figure it out, let me know, because I'll play it. He ended up being, not only one of our play testers, but a guy who did some of the scenario design for the specific scenarios in Mr. President. But to answer your question, I figured it out about 2014-ish and had a prototype by about 2015 and made a big mistake of putting it on P500 at the time, thinking that I'd be done in a year.
Oh, I see.
Well, about that time, GMT started growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, one year we had 85% growth, which is incredible. It's great on one side, and the other side, it kills companies. That kind of growth will kill a company.
Right.
So I had to pay attention to the company. There were times where 3 months went by, I didn't even look at Mr. President. And then when I would get back to it, I'd spend 2 weeks just trying to figure out where I was. So it was really an agonizing process for me, because I wanted to get it done and I wanted to do my job at GMT, and they were competing interests, and I seemingly couldn't do either one as well as I wanted to. But at the end of the day, thanks to lots of people who gave me lots of help, both on the game and with the company, We got a successful game out of it, and the company's still doing well. So in this case, Richard Berg would probably still tell me the same thing, but, but it worked out a little better this time.
So, I mean, you, Mark Herman, Richard Berg, are about the same age, right?
Well, Mark is considerably older than I am.
But he's very tall.
Considerably older.
Ask a stupid question. Okay.
Yeah.
So, when did you listen to Richard Berg and Mark Herman? Who are these guys when you were that young? Like, why did they have so much weight?
I'll tell you what. Go to Inside GMT and read a piece called Farewell, My Friend. I wrote it when Richard Berg passed, and it will explain a lot about the relationship and the friendship that Richard and Mark and I had. I think my favorite thing about GMT is that the people you work with become your friends.
Yeah, well, I would think so.
And your customers become your friends.
Yes.
So, and I love all that. But Richard and Mark and I we're really very different people, like a lot of times happens with friends or marriages or whatever. And yet we just, from the beginning, we were fast friends.
But I mean,
Richard Berg, I'm sorry?
I heard Richard Berg, I heard he was like a savory character. You know what I mean? Someone
Richard was unique. The first time I ever went to his house in White Plains, we didn't play a game the whole week I was there. And this would never, ever happen if I were at Mark Herman's house, right? We'd definitely be playing games. But Richard he had been in a rock and roll band. He was incredible on the keyboard. He had been in Broadway shows. And he tells me the whole week, he goes, I'm going to teach you how to have culture. You know? So he failed, by the way. I mean, clearly it didn't work. But he was just endearing, you know.
It's a shame we couldn't have him work with Dan.
Okay, relax.
Just
I still cook.
Yeah, that's funny, Rachel.
I still cook some things the way Richard taught me. You know, he taught because he was a chef as well. Anyway,
God,
let the other guys talk. But Richard and Mark, lifelong friends, and that's one of the great joys of GMT to me.
So this guy Richard Berg, basically, he's a Renaissance man. Like, I mean,
a little bit.
You're not wrong.
He seemed to be good at everything he did.
You could find the single that he played on YouTube somewhere.
Get lost.
Actually.
Mark's right. Richard sucked at playing games. He was terrible. If you want to win a game, just play against Richard.
That is fair. But we've got the GMT Dream Team on here, Dan. We could talk. I'd be delighted to talk about Richard Berg, but let's not squander this opportunity.
Yeah, let's talk to Ty and Rachel.
Yeah.
Well,
so, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Rachel. Your idea about having not crossword puzzles, blankets, for God's sake. See, when you get old, you don't even know blanket.
You mean the throws?
Yeah, the throws.
Those are
that
Kai's.
going? How is that going?
Those are Kai's, Dan.
Yeah, what did I say?
You said Rachel.
I meant Kai.
Okay.
I have to order one yet. I have not ordered.
You know what I'm
yet.
saying?
My wife is going to flip when she sees that.
Kai,
They're very soft.
They're selling slowly, but at least every month I'm selling either a blanket or a puzzle. My sister runs the site that I sell off of, so every once in a while she just sends me a message, hey, you just sold another 3 or whatever. One guy bought 2, put them on his couch, turned around to get some, and came back, and his dogs had claimed them. So he said he was going to be ordering more for him and his wife because the dogs aren't letting them want to go.
And Kai, is it like a print to order thing? Like you can order any map, or is it certain maps that you put out to print?
It's the maps that I've got prepped to print. So it's the first 36 from Europe and Med, and then the first 12 from Pacific. And then if they do well and continue to, gradually sell, I will go ahead and keep working more maps into that.
Holy hell, that many, eh?
And puzzles.
So
Puzzles.
And puzzles.
The throws are awesome. They're awesome. I need to order one. That's all.
They're super soft. That's what I love.
That's
I actually
My
have
wife
one
would
that's on my
punch me in the
couch.
face.
I want to ask because this is somewhat related to something from the latest newsletter, right? Which is the sort of outside the hobby exposure that Napoleon has gotten. That's pretty unusual for a war game or war game adjacent game. What can we do inside the hobby to make it easier for people who aren't already inside the hobby to find us and become aware of the awesome games and awesome people that we have inside this community? Maybe that's a question for Rachel, since it's kind of an outreach question, right?
That's true. Now, Napoleon did surprise me to see so much outside of the general, like, I guess you could say GMT audience. I think that's because there's a role-playing element to it. I think it's really fun. Solo games are getting more popular. As far as how to get more people into the hobby, for me personally, I feel like watching people like you guys or anyone, more general like hobby people online.
It's still niche. Though.
If you continue to make awesome games, that's going to help too.
Well, that helps.
Like Rachel, how do you attend like European conventions like the Essen Spiel or whatever?
Spiel is in Essen, Dan.
And that's why I said whatever, Artie. For God's sakes, why must you call me out all the time?
I'm just saying. It's in Germany. We're wargamers. We're supposed to know the geography of Germany.
So do you think GMT would make more would cover more ground going to a convention like that, or it's totally useless?
I mean, maybe.
That's actually, you managed to turn that into a great question, actually. Would there be value in showing up at something like Spiel? Which is like, 150,000 people or some ridiculous number like that?
We've done that. We've run a booth. Two years we ran booths at Spiel.
That's got to be high intensity, huh?
Oh my God! And is it dealer driven, or is it? It's a dealer place, right? It's where dealers go and shop.
But it's completely different than what you find in the U.S.
They speak German.
Imagine, thanks, Dan.
That's my line.
Well,
thanks, Dan.
Imagine a hall like Origins or Gen Con is in, and then imagine putting like 15 of those halls next to
man. No.
With doors in between.
You're freaking me out.
It dwarfs Gen Con in terms of attendance.
The aisles are really wide, and I couldn't figure it out. I was there on a Thursday prepping for the booth, and I asked Uli Glenneman, who was helping us, why are the aisles so wide? He goes, I'll come back on Saturday, you'll know. There's 250,000 people in this place.
Oh, man.
It's just crazy. And I asked Uli, I said, I need to learn how to say excuse me in German. He said, don't worry about it. We're not that polite.
They just say bitte. Bitte? That's the universal word for excuse me or thank you or please or whatever.
But you were talking with Uwe? Did you say
Blenneman, not Eichert.
Uli Blenneman.
Oh, sorry.
Uli Blenneman.
Okay. Yeah.
He's a good dude.
And by the way, it's Entschuldigung.
Well, but my understanding is they usually actually say bitte.
Let it go. Let it go.
I'm just saying.
Our experience there was it helped us, and at the time we had some Reiner Knizia games that were new. It helped us a little, but it was so expensive to go. So for a company that didn't have really deep pockets, it's hard to drop $35,000 on a show. And
seriously,
you gotta sell a lot of games to recoup that.
No kidding.
But you don't go there basically. Well, you go there, yes, to sell games, but Matt, are you going to sell $35,000 worth of games to dealers?
Is it really more expensive than the hassle of going to Columbus, Ohio, and dealing with Gamma for 5 days?
Well, there's a reason we don't do that.
Other than it's on the other side of the country.
No, I mean, we don't pay them or anything. It's exorbitantly expensive. So we send teams and designers, and we do demonstrations, and we run tournaments, but we don't have a booth, and we don't deal with all the mess. I did that for a lot of years, and back in the day, it was kind of worth it, but the expenses just gotten too high for a company like us.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Plus, I felt like things went pretty well this past Origins, for example. So, I mean, there's Gen Con too. But from California's perspective, that's probably not any closer or less expensive. It might be a little bit more, if anything, considering
Yeah, I mean, we've got
50,000 people.
We got people all over the country that we could send to do it, and we did this year. But getting the games there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and all that's the problem. It's just really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So what?
Somebody, go ahead, Dan.
To get the games there, I guess you need a container.
Yeah.
Right, Kai? I guess you need a container.
I mean, you could
You
probably,
know-
if you were driving inside the continental U.S., you could rent a truck, which is not zero expense. But
The
I've
container on
I've
wheels.
driven that kind of truck to Origins, with tons of product in the back. But that's a lot of product. I mean, just you guys bring an awful lot of stuff just to WBC. So
Yeah. And the thing is, you know what, Kai? Kai, listen to me, Kai. I come from Montreal East, Kai. An Italian from Montreal East who knows a lot of Irishmen who own the port. So a lot of that money, in all the ports of the world are going to some shady Italian.
and his name is Dan, for the record.
No.
So this is a great question, actually, from Stacking Limit. Whose idea was the podcast? I was delighted to see, both delighted to see that there was a podcast and that it was also landing on YouTube as well, which I think is fantastic. Who came up with that idea?
Trying to remember if it was actually Luke and I's idea or if our father was like, "You guys need to do this." I can't remember.
Jane's not saying anything.
It's
so
convenient that you can't remember.
Yeah. Let's just say it was my idea. How about that? We've been trying to get into video for a long time, so we just decided a podcast would be a good way to do it.
Well, I mean, GMT's had a channel for ages, right? I mean, when I started doing wargaming content, which has been several years now, there was a GMT channel already at that point, I think, and a bunch of Joel Toppin stuff up at that time. So
he ran the whole channel for a long time.
That is fantastic. Everybody asks this question, and apparently I haven't covered it sufficiently on my show.
General Mountain Time.
I'll let Gene tell this particular story.
It's
To
simple.
whatever extent he's comfortable with.
I mean, it's simple. It was the three guys that started it in 1990. Gene, Mike, and Terry. Terry lasted about 2 months. Mike lasted about 2 months. Terry lasted about 6 months. And then they were gone to do things their way at Fresno Gaming Association.
Mm-hmm.
And we obviously didn't agree about some things. And
Mm-hmm.
so I said, all right, do it your way. And I'll do it my way. And so,
Well, mission accomplished. They did it their way. So
so anyway,
I'm
it was
satisfied
funny
with how
because
things worked out.
at the time, I'm pretty relational about work and business and family and all that. And it was really discouraging to have a company break up with people that I thought were my friends. And I literally almost stopped. I went back to Memphis where my wife's family lived over Christmas that year. And I just thought about it. What am I going to do? When I came back, I decided, I'm going to move forward. But the weird thing is we had 3 games out at the time. And I thought, well, I can't change the name because we already have 3 whole games that have built our image. And now looking at that, in the rearview mirror, I'm like, okay, that's pretty short-sighted. But
Now that was what Silver Bayonet, Operation Shoestring, and Air Bridge to Victory were the first 3. Okay.
Right.
And so, Gene,
Yes.
I guess back in the days, in the 70s and the 80s, it was a certain type of world. Would this work today?
Would what work today?
GMT,
That was what I was about to
starting
ask.
GMT. You know what I'm saying? Like kicking off a company like this.
I think it would be easier today.
Really?
Yeah.
If you think about, I feel like that makes quite a bit of sense because we have marketing tools, meaning the internet, basically, that they didn't really have back in
I'm laughing at
1990.
Mark around, sorry.
Yeah. So And the like desktop publishing. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody really likes that terminology anymore, but the barrier to entry for publication is way lower now. Plus, you've got, well, forced in some cases options for manufacture offshore and things like that, because frankly, most of that infrastructure just doesn't exist over here anymore. So we've had a number of questions about the physical warehouse itself. This was not something you bought out of pocket in 1990, I assume. Who'd you buy the warehouse from? What was there before? And how long have you guys been there?
So didn't buy the warehouse. It's a long-term lease.
Okay.
It was empty before we got there. Years before that, it was like a company that sold fire extinguishers.
Yeah, some cartel owned it or something.
But the interesting part to me, anyway, probably not to anybody else, but it's one of the older buildings in Armona, which used to be one of 6 packing houses where they would bring you guys already know, we live in this place where this 400-mile long valley where we grow all this agriculture and feed a lot of the country. Well, our warehouse backs up to a rail line, and so there were 6 of these big packing houses, and they would bring the raw fruit and vegetables into the packing houses, and then they would pack it and lid it and all the stuff, and then they would send it over to the north-south railways and send it to San Francisco and LA and Sacramento and feed that part of California. And so my dad and my grandfather both worked in our building during the Depression and World War II. And so
in that building.
And so it's pretty cool for me. And once in a while, I don't think about it all the time, but it's just pretty cool to work where they did one time, back
What's the square footage on the warehouse, if you know that number off the top of your head?
It's 27,500 square feet right now.
Okay.
That's my lot.
On the rare occasions when I have set foot in I spent a considerable percentage of my life in warehouses. And it's always a little weird to go into a gaming warehouse where it just feels off, right? Where all this joy is around me, but it looks exactly like the place I've worked for the last 15 years.
So I'm gonna ask a question. It might sound stupid, but I'm sure you've thought about it. Gene, Rachel, Kai, having that much carton in one place. I don't know what the weather is like if you're in a valley or if you're more on a mountain.
It's hot.
The humidity, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the cardboard, not carton? Sorry, I'm speaking French. Cardboard. You know what I mean?
Assume with air conditioning.
Yeah, in a warehouse.
A lot of warehouses are not air conditioned, I got to tell you.
That's what I'm saying.
So Kai can talk about how we get it there. First of all, the environment, very low humidity. If you think about what our climate's like, think about Phoenix, but about 10 degrees cooler. It's very arid, dry, but we have great irrigation system, which is what lets us grow. We have a 9-10 month growing season and great irrigation. So that's why we're good with agriculture. But in terms of the paper products, we keep most things sealed in terms of long term, and then we have on our shelves like a short term, enough to fill distributor orders this month, next month, sort of thing, and then we pull them out of the back where they're sealed when we need more. So we probably don't need to do that because of humidity. It's low, but we just think it's better because we want to make sure every way we can that a gamer doesn't get something from us that's warped or has a problem.
Soggy.
Yeah.
Nobody. Is it inevitable that you need that much? What do you call it, Artie? When you have a lot of stock?
Inventory.
Thank you. Is it necessary?
Let me try and reframe that question for Kai, actually, because this is really a production question in terms of, you don't have to give us actual numbers if you're not comfortable doing that, but what kind of scale is it efficient for a company of GMT size to operate at, right? In terms of you're ordering a print run of 2,000 or 10,000 or whatever. I imagine 10,000 would be unusual, but what's the scale look like? I mean, and is it different because of offshore manufacturing? So how much of this crap do you have to sit on, I guess, is the gist of the question, right?
So what I shoot for is being able to cover not only the P500 orders, but the distributor orders that Tony handles, and then have enough game in stock to last us probably about 2 years. If it was
That much?
Yeah, that much. Because I don't want to have to be constantly reprinting stuff. I'd rather be printing new games rather than constantly having to stop and reprint the stuff that I should have just ordered more in the first place. So
I
we
see.
try to find that number, where's that tipping point where we don't have to warehouse it because there's a cost to that. But that we can afford the print run at the same time. But I'm finding that our print runs are lasting not as long as what I had anticipated. And part of that is simply the popularity of the titles that we're putting out right now. A couple of them have surprised me.
I've had worse problems.
Yeah. Having to go through a reprint. Oh, darn. We didn't print enough because it got really popular.
So it's a gamble all the time on numbers. It's a gamble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, but it's a calculated gamble where we learn from every single time we do it, and we generally get better. I was telling Rachel today that we're not where I want to be with this issue you're talking about. I would like to see us not run out of stock of the hot games in 2 months, like has happened to us twice now.
Yeah.
I would like to have that stock for a year. And on the games that aren't hot, that sell a little bit slower, I'd like to have a couple years of stock that we move through. But Tony and I have been trying to figure this out for 30 years. It's not an easy problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gene, you just can't pick up the phone, call China and say, hey, I need another 5,000 tomorrow. Please, let's go.
Sometimes, actually, you could. If you didn't have to make any changes. Kai could. But, and she can tell you all the details of this. But if, for example, the Plum Island Horror, we printed that in December. And
was it sold out by January?
I didn't know what the print run was. And when I found out, I was unhappy. And I said, because I work in the marketing department too, and I said, we're going to sell out of that in 3 weeks.
Right. I thought so too. Yeah.
And so we went to Tony because he handles cash flow, and went to Kai and said, what can we do? Well, they can just turn the spigot back on, essentially, at the printer. But then it's still got to go through the same process of get to the port, get across the pond, and all that. So we had enough. We had enough more made that we only had about maybe, what was it, Kai? About 3 weeks we were out of stock, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Bloody hell!
So that worked pretty well, and now we're down to, we're probably going to sell out of them in the sale next week. I think we've got just
like 100 or so.
Yeah, like 100. That's
Herman
not bad.
Luttman's he's laughing. Herman, he's in his Lamborghini.
That's a great. He did a good job
in his Lamborghini. Have you met Herman? I'm pretty sure he would not fit in a Lamborghini.
Hey, listen. You put a Lamborghini in front of anybody, they're going to sit in it.
You would fit in a Lamborghini, however, Dan.
Maybe not. Not now. I got to.
You might fit in the center console, actually. I'm just saying. Anyway, folks, let's remind everybody that GMT's annual sale does start. Is it the 3rd through the 9th, which is next Tuesday through like a week and a half later. So that's almost like Wargamer Christmas, really.
Yep.
So unfortunately, I have everything already. So.
If you'll let us talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
The category already on our website on the sidebar called Fall Sale 2024, I think it is. Mm-hmm. So if you guys want to shop ahead of time and just kind of get your cart ready, you can do that now.
How about that?
What does that sound like?
I'm working on it.
Customer update in a couple days with all the details on the sale. But before that, you can go set your carts up, like Rachel said.
Which is a great idea because, to be honest, your website tends to get absolutely crushed on the first day or two. So
we hate it too when that happens.
I mean, is traffic that much of a problem? Like, will it actually knock down your server?
have you not dealt with this? I have dealt with this. No, the website is completely. I mean, it's not taking the server out, but it's crushed. It's all Mitch's fault. Remember that. It's Mitch and Microsoft. It's their fault.
That's a good. Yep.
So
Mitch does everything he can, and still,
I know.
still.
I mean, you can't set your web when you're building a website, right? And setting up that back end infrastructure, you can't just set it up. I mean, I guess you can pay for it for your maximum expected traffic, but then you're throwing a whole lot of money away the rest of the other 51 weeks of the year, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody does it that way.
Kai, how far are you away from GMT, from all the offices and all that?
About 5.5 hour drive.
California's a big state.
You never get to see management, right?
Oh, we're in constant contact. I go down a couple times a year, but we're in constant contact with each other.
There's this thing called the internet, Dan.
Yeah, it's awful fancy.
You know, because I got the perfect job. I am right now a sanitary engineer. Okay, I've graduated after many years of schooling, and my bosses are not around, and I just take care of my stuff. And it's the best job I've ever had.
This is a great question, actually. What was I'm not sure if this was in the newsletter or not. If it was, I forgot it. Why is the sale in September this year as opposed to the usual time? This works great for me, by the way. I'm just saying, you keep it in September permanently as far as I'm concerned. But what was the actual thinking behind moving it to September?
We've been trying to get it out of November for a while because it just absolutely crushes our office and warehouse people. Between the sale, the P500s that inevitably go out at the end of November or early December to try to get them out before Christmas, and then the normal Christmas ordering. So we've been trying to figure out how to move it. This year, Tony wanted to do it in September, and then we had to figure a window in September, and the only one we had really was right after Labor Day, because on the 17th, and actually it was going to be the 10th, but we moved it. On the 17th, we're charging for Red Dust Rebellion and all the Labyrinth games. And Red Dust Rebellion has, 3,100 orders? That's going to be a list.
Seriously, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And is there a reason why that was I'm going to say held up, for lack of a better word, that long, Red Dust Rebellion?
Was it? I mean, was it just that it needed a lot of art? I figured it would need a lot of art.
So Gene, going back to your putting a game on, like,
did you say pudding, Dan? I could use some pudding right about now.
I said pudding.
How can you have any meat when you can't finish your meat?
Gene.
Yes, sir.
What was I saying? Oh, putting a game on too early on the P500. Red Dust Rebellion is that one of the I put this game out too early?
I don't think so. From where we were, what happened is the art took forever.
It's a lot of art.
I mean, Jay pretty much had the design and it's a coin series, so it's not like it's automatically done, but the structure's there. And then Jason and the developers, they knew what they were doing with that one. The art just took a really long time. And then Kai could tell you about the production stuff. We had a slight delay there toward the end, but the big thing was art overall.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes complete sense to me. If you think about, like, say, Fire in the Lake, right, which is a big, very nicely produced game. Every card pretty much has an image on it, but it is, one could go and look at history books and get images and stuff like that, as opposed to having to hire. How many artists worked on Red Dust Rebellion?
Well, for the cards, it was one guy, which is why it took so long.
Wow. Okay. No wonder. I could have sent you my portfolio of crude stick figures.
Well, I mean, we're learning stuff as we go. Thank you. They would match mine. We're learning as we go. Art teams. What you give up with an art team is that that unitary vision. You know, it's harder to put that together, but things go a little faster. So with sci-fi games, like you said, that's the issue. You have to create stuff. So away team, we did it differently.
Hmm.
And so
you just gave it all to John, and it's all word count instead.
Well, he wanted to do some of it, but some of it's not John. So there's a team of people, and we did the same thing with dividing up the writing. So there's a team of people there, and it's going to be to market next year instead of 3 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lots of folks are looking forward to that game big time too.
I have a general question for all three. What was the most, and not because of subject, not because of designer, but because of issues, what was the most ball-busting game that you guys put out?
I think Dan's looking for the most difficult game.
Oh, for God's sakes. You know what I mean?
Like to get through the pipeline?
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Problems here, problems there,
Well,
problems
the
there.
fact that the game weighs 113 pounds is
Mr.
probably a
President.
contributing factor, right?
Mr. President, the designer's an idiot.
Mr.
What can I
President.
say?
That was really hard.
No, it was good.
Gene, you're taking too much on your shoulders. What a good guy.
Well,
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Production-wise, that was an easy lift. It was the design and development.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It's a really complicated game, man. There's literally a lot of moving pieces in that thing. I can completely understand why that took a while in the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Every game's different, and what we're learning over time is when something should go on P500. Anymore, I mean, we never put an idea on P500. It's got to be,
Oh, I see. Okay.
But you're going to see us wait until there is finished art for some games, put it on P500 and print it in 6 months. There will be some games like that, but not all games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's not just based on who the designer is. There are production issues, logistical issues that happen. So how can you foresee a certain game 6 months and I'm going to print it?
I imagine sometimes you can't.
Sometimes you can't.
Sometimes you can't. But what I'm saying is, if we know there's a game, but you don't know there's a game yet,
Mark Herman knows there's a game.
we can do all the work, the art, everything else before it ever goes on P500. And if we have the cash flow, which oftentimes we do, to be able to say, no matter what the orders are, Kai's going to have this thing ready to print 3, 4, 5 months after it's on P500. That's the schedule. We have the capability to do that. So there may well be games where you see that happen. The issue that I have is how to do that and not play favorites in the designers, because that's important.
Yeah, I can imagine that's an issue. I would think so. Yeah. So, do you disassociate yourself from that responsibility?
No.
You don't.
The decider's got to decide, Dan.
Yeah, so you're a massive.
Jason does a lot of the work with the designers, but I still take a lot of the games. I still make strategic deals with a lot of the designers. I also trust Jason to do it. Andy Lewis sometimes does it. Tony and Mark Simonich deal with all the commands and color stuff. So, but if it's a situation where I need to explain to a designer why something's happening, that's usually going to be me.
That makes a lot of sense.
That doesn't sound good.
Well, you want to. That's not a thing you should delegate. Let's put it that way. Somebody, if you gotta hash something out with somebody, that's a thing I would personally prefer to handle myself. So I completely see where Gene's coming from. On
At the end of the day, having a face-to-face conversation, even if it's like this, with somebody, when you have something tough to discuss, especially, it's just what's respectful, I think.
I get it. Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah. And the
all
thing
right,
is,
folks.
Wait. I got
Go
more
ahead, Dan.
questions.
Finish up, Dan. Go ahead.
So, Christ, what was I gonna say?
This happens all the time.
Oh,
In
Jesus.
fairness, I do it sometimes too.
Oh my God, you screwed me up again. You
So-
did it on purpose.
Anyway, folks, we are already 5 minutes over, so if Dan thinks of his question in the next 10 seconds, he can ask it. Otherwise, we'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and we would especially, I think especially is the word I'm looking for, like to thank Gene, Rachel, and Kai for coming out this evening and spending this hour with us. It has been absolutely fantastic, and we would love to have any or all of you back at the earliest possible opportunity. Gene, when Mr. President 2 comes out,
All right.
I want you to come back. How about
Thanks
that?
for having us, guys. We appreciate
Wait,
it.
thanks for having us.
I remember my question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so you guys, like basically you three guys are dealing with artistic people. These
Yes.
designers, they're artistic. They're crazy. They're crazy.
It
You have to
sounds
be a little
like-
crazy to deal with crazy.
I'm an artist myself, but you know what I mean? They don't see the same green as you see. Trust me. They don't see it. So you're basically human resources, man.
Every single designer we work with is a unique person. I mean,
Of course.
that's not. I didn't even have to say that, right? But I think that you just can't create a rigid environment for when you
I
have
know you can't.
with unique creative people. So we don't say, for example, what games we're going to produce. We let our designers decide what they want to work on. And if Ted Racer comes and says, Gene, what should I work on next? I say, what are you interested in? What are you
But of
reading?
course.
What's passionate? What are you passionate
Of
about?
course.
But if you try to put those kind of personalities in a box, then
Nah.
sooner or later people are going to get really frustrated. So we just don't do
Absolutely.
that.
Maybe you're never going to be Milton Bradley for that reason, but
It's okay.
I'm okay with
And by
that,
the
too.
way, Gene, Rachel, and Kai, thank you so much for your support. My God, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right, once again, thanks so much to Rachel and Kai and Gene for coming out tonight. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We've had a great audience here tonight, and I want to wish everybody a great rest of the night.